Was the He Gets Us Super Bowl ad an abomination or an inspiration? That is the question that has been really sparked across social media in a lot of Christian circles. Not everybody loved that commercial. If you didn't see the commercial, it's basically a series of images showing people having their feet washed, presumably by Christians. Feet washing, obviously, something we see in the biblical narrative. But it was the messaging at the end of the ad about hate that sparked a lot of controversy, but there are lots of other questions about He Gets Us, and again, two sides. Some people love it, some people hate it. I did my column on this on the Washington Times this week, and now I want to bring somebody on who can tell us more about this campaign. He Gets Us spokesman Jason Vanderground joins us on today's Higher Ground to field the toughest questions about the ad and to share his organization's reasoning for putting it out during the Super Bowl. Here is Jason Vanderground. So, Jason, you've had an interesting couple of days since the He Gets Us ad ran during the Super Bowl. Lots of conversation about it. We're going to get into the discussion, the debate, but let's start with the heart behind this ad campaign. And obviously, you had one last year as well. What is it that drives He Gets Us?
He Gets Us is all about inviting everybody into that message of Jesus. And so when we look back at who Jesus said his message was for, he said, I came for the world. I offer my message of love and forgiveness to every single person. And that's what we're trying to do. And so many times it's these big moments in culture, and certainly the Super Bowl, is at the top of that list, where we're trying to put a clear message of Jesus in front of people who uh eh, are at a point in their spiritual journey where they're very, very skeptical of what the Christian faith is all about. And so we're trying to find a way where they can say, I see Jesus and I'm interested in some of his qualities and I'd like to know more. That's the heart of what He Gets Us is all about.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I wanted to ask you this, and I don't know the answer to it, but I've often wondered when I've seen the ads, is there more than one audience too? Is there an element of the ads that are aimed at maybe people who are Christians or who are calling themselves Christians who maybe haven't lived out loving others the way they were called to? Is that ever sort of an audience that you guys aim for as well?
So the primary audience for He Gets Us is, and what we refer to as spiritually open skeptics, and it's actually the vast majority of Americans would identify themselves as spiritually open, but they're skeptical of Christianity. They unfortunately they see it as more hypocritical, more judgmental, and more discriminatory. And we're certainly saying, like, that's not what Jesus intended. Jesus said the hallmark of following me is going to be that you love other people. That the main way that people are going to say that's a Jesus follower right there is by the way that we love and treat others. And so we're trying to move the country back in that kind of a direction. A secondary audience for us is like-minded Jesus followers, and sometimes we almost think of it as like it's like the Batman symbol in the sky, where people look up and they go, "That's my Jesus." Like that's the Jesus I know that moves in culture like that, that draws people to Himself, and then begins a process of getting to know each other.
Yeah, and I think, it's so interesting to watch, reaction and response. Obviously, a Super Bowl ad is going to get that. They always do. Are you surprised at all, or did you expect this level of discussion, debate? You're getting everything from, oh my goodness, this is amazing, I'm in tears, to, oh my gosh, I think this violates scripture in some way. I mean, you get these wide sweeping reactions. Were you surprised by that at all?
I wouldn't say that we were surprised. There was quite a bit of that last year. We ran an ad last year that showed people fighting, people arguing, people on and you have to, in order to have a message that gets through, in between beer and chips in the Super Bowl, you have to do something that is provocative. And so if it's just kind of a lukewarm message, like no one pays attention to that. So we are trying to get people to, like, we're trying to break through. C.S. Lewis talked about the idea of that you have to steal past watchful dragons, that there are so many things in our minds that keep us from a lot of times from receiving new truth. We tend to compartmentalize things or dismiss things. So we have to find a way of breaking through all of those barriers in a moment where there's so much noise. I mean, just getting back from Vegas for a week, it's like Super Bowl and Vegas. There's so many things going on. What is going to draw attention to Jesus in this moment? And so we know it is interesting though, because we have people who are angry at us for opposite reasons. And so a lot of times, when you lay them out, you go, well, how could all of this be true? How could we be woke tricksters and fascists at the same time? And
Right,
so we're
right.
kind of like, I said in another interview, it's a little bit reassuring when you have people who go, I don't like that message. Um, because he experienced that as well. And we take that, kind of as a sober badge that we must be onto something if there's some people who don't like it.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many questions I have around that because I do think, one of the things it feels like a lot of people always want to have the first message be "Go and sin no more," right? And that, as a Christian, for me, that has to be the message at some point in the journey. Now, Jesus didn't always lead with that, right? He's healing people, and then later on, the guy he heals, who's an invalid, he finds him later on and tells him stop sinning. It's not the first thing he does; he heals him first, right? And so, of course, people have this idea of what an evangelistic ad should look like. And so they're sort of stuck in that mold. It has to look this way. Why did you guys choose? And you sort of explained, but I want to, to focus on the love attribute of Jesus in that spot before getting into any of those other issues.
I think one of the things about our approach is we try to be very humble, and we try to not go in with this authoritative kind of superiority position. And so we're recognizing, like, we're not Jesus. I'm just Jason. I'm one person. Other people that work on we're just one individual. And to talk that way to another adult in your very first conversation, we don't have a lot of conversations like that. The way that my wife and I, or my even I think a lot about my kids, like what happens when something goes wrong? Like what does that conversation look like that actually is for the good of my son, my teenage son? How would I talk to them? And um, so that's how we're trying to engage this audience. And the what really resonate with the spiritually open skeptic is they look at Jesus, and we did a lot of testing. We said, of all the figures in human history, and we asked them, what are the qualities that you see in each person? And skeptics look at Jesus and they go, I'm not sure about Christianity, but in Jesus I see somebody who was unconditionally loving, who was welcoming, who was approachable, uh, who was sitting there having dinner with all sorts of people, and they're fascinated with that approach. And so our focus, we're just doing 60-second commercials, or we had one commercial in the Super Bowl that was 15 seconds. We have very short periods of time, and we emphasize those qualities that are particularly intriguing to somebody who is skeptical about the Christian faith.
Yeah, and this would be called an entryway, right? For a lot of people, this is the first time maybe they're looking at Jesus in a different way. One of the big critiques was, that somehow, and this was not how I wrote an op-ed on this for the Washington Times. This is not how I viewed it when I first saw it, but for some people, they saw this as, you see a person at the end who appears to be a member maybe of the LGBT community. You see a person outside of a clinic. You can make assumptions about who that person is or what they've done or might do. People saw it as an endorsement of the behaviors or the thoughts or the ideas of the person sitting down having their feet washed. That was not how I saw it. What was the intent of how those people should be seen in those seats?
So the message that we were trying to get across is, we go back and we're just, we're looking at this year and all of the things that we're facing as an American people this year. And we're more lonely than we've ever been. We have a lot of anxiety. It's going to be a presidential election year. There's going to be a lot of divisiveness around that. And so um, we're looking back through Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John and just saying, well, what disruptive message would Jesus have for us in this kind of an environment? and we were going back and we're looking at that Last Supper that Jesus has with his disciples, and here he is on his feet, and he doesn't have a lot of time left, and he's teaching them, and then because we have it in Scripture, he's teaching the rest of us. Here's what's really important to me. I didn't come to be served. I came to serve. And he gets down on all fours and he starts washing each of their feet. And I think sometimes we take it for granted, maybe, that he's going around the table and he's washing Judas's feet, who is going to betray him, who's going to do wrong to him. He washes the feet of Peter, who's going to deny him. He washes the feet of Matthew, who, at least up until that point had been known as just a tax cheat who took advantage of his own people for a foreign government. I mean, it's but he washes all 12 of them, irregardless of who they are, what they've done, the mistakes that they've made. And there seems to be this unconditionalness to his love. And so, what we're trying to do is say, okay, as we go about our daily lives, as we go through the grocery store and interact with the clerk, as we're driving and we're interacting with other drivers, as we're on the sidewalk and passing people by, can we treat each other with just a fundamental human decency and respect, which doesn't mean that we're not going to have different positions on theological things or moral things. We're not saying that people have to give those up. What we are saying is we believe that Jesus was calling everybody to a certain humility, a certain service, and to treating everybody with respect and decency because we're all made in the image of God, not because we agree on, political or moral positions.
Yeah. No, I think there's so many pieces to this too. But at the end of the day, do you guys want to see people accept Jesus, and change their lives? That's the question I feel like that people aren't overtly asking. They're saying, well, they did this or they did. Do you want to see that heart changed inevitably? At the end of the day, is the goal more, let's be better people, or is that end goal, hey, we want to see conversions to and real life change to Christianity?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that people would find interesting, our focus is on increasing the proximity between Jesus and millions of spiritually open individuals in the US, and that they would that they would move closer to him, that they would be intrigued to investigate more, to explore more. One of the things that we're most excited about is we have 7 weekly Bible reading plans on our website. And so as people are ready, we're inviting them into, hey, read all of these stories about the life and teachings of Jesus from Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And we've seen a significant spike just in the last 72 hours in those Bible reading plans. And so that's powerful. When people have gone from, I just have a lot of questions, to now I'm on the website, I'm reading an in depth article about what foot washing is all about, what Jesus meant by it. Now I'm intrigued to start going into the Gospels and I want to start reading more. Our goal is that there would be greater proximity between the spiritually open skeptic and the like-minded Jesus follower and Jesus himself and his message. So we're certainly looking for a closeness there, but recognizing that people are their own adults, they need to have agency, and they work best when they are determining how fast they're ready to move forward in their spiritual journey.
Are you one of the things from last year and this year, one other question about collecting data and how I know you guys have tested these ads before they go, obviously, and you have a good idea of how they're going to be received. When it comes to people reading those Bible plans, when it comes to people who might indicate a decision to, embrace Jesus and find salvation, do you guys track that and do you kind of collect those stories? How does that part of it work after? Is there an apparatus for that built in?
We certainly collect all the things, we look at the trends on our website, and so we're seeing an uptrend in more Bible reading plans. We're also seeing people sign up for like smaller group experiences, signing up to be part of an alpha group, which is designed specifically for a spiritually open skeptic, where they can get together with other like-minded people and start asking some of the questions that they have. We think that's very healthy. That's where that change, and where you see people growing closer to, really operating based on the Jesus way, following his example. That's what our goal is that there would we would see such a surge in people reorienting their lives around the example and teachings of Jesus, that we'd be able to see it on a cultural level and actually see the country moving closer towards, how Jesus intended us all to live.
Yeah, no, and again, I think a lot of people, they assume there's a line, right? It's 0 to 10, and if you're at a 0 on an issue, and 10 being accept Jesus, find salvation, that you're going to get people from that 0 to a 10 immediately, and that's just not how life works, right? You may get a person from a 0 to a 3, and then hopefully there are other breadcrumbs that bring them further on that process over time, and it's not going to be just that. I can't speak for you, but that one commercial or that one thing that does it, right? It's one part of that puzzle. There are people who go from 0 to 10, and that's awesome. But I do think people are missing some of that in this discussion. The idea that you guys are endorsing all of and again, not every single one of the images that you show in that ad is a behavior, right? They're different people with different perspectives or different experiences. But the idea, just to kind of drive this home, that you guys are endorsing the behaviors or the ideologies seen in those images, that's not accurate, correct? I mean, you guys are not, that wasn't the intent for you to say, no, this is okay and we should endorse this.
Our intent is to show a whole host of people, and particularly in the Super Bowl spot, we're looking at people who kind of represent the other, and so to take kind of two sides of everything, and we're leaning into the areas where we have tension in culture, because that's where it resonates. I mean, the fact that we could run 12 images in like 60 seconds, and people come away and they go, "Oh wow, I got a whole bunch of meaning out of that," and it's different for different people. I think one of the things that I think we have to deal with is there are so many people in our country who would say, I don't deserve love. I'm not welcome there. I'm not accepted. I don't belong there. That's not for me." And certainly we would say that wasn't Jesus' message. When we watch him at these dinners that he went to over and over and over again, he's constantly having dinners with people who go, "Well, why are you talking to them? We're not supposed to hang out with them." And Jesus never really saw it that way. He was like, I came for everybody. And so what we're trying to have these bold overtures to say, the message of Jesus is for everybody. You are loved. You are welcome. You are invited. And if you're interested in Jesus, like, let's have that conversation. No one should be excluded from that. And so that's what we're trying to get across with these very bold overtures that you're seeing during Super Bowl commercials.
Yeah. Well, you've given me a lot of time here. I'm going to let you go in a second, but I will say, you can't, again, and this is just to sort of give my perspective here. Imagine if Jesus had gone and said to the woman caught in adultery, go and sin no more. I'm not going to stop them from stoning you until you stop, you agree to stop sinning right now. He does, again, he convinces them to leave her alone, and then he speaks to her. And so we often do not see people leading with that message right away. And I think we have to acknowledge that and understand that as Christians, that is not how people respond to things. That is not how it works. As you were saying, we don't just have conversations that are like that. That's just not how life works. So I do appreciate you taking the time, and I'm sure you're going to have more ads coming soon that will be sparking more discussion, but really do appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much, Billy. I appreciate you.
That brings us to the end of today's Higher Ground. Lots of interesting discussion points on He Gets Us. I know people on both sides are not going to be swayed by that conversation probably, but it does give us a lot to think about, and it's great to hear from the people directly involved. Listen, I'll be back next week with another episode of the show. Very excited to bring you an interview with Brandon Showalter. He is the host of Christian Post Generation Indoctrination podcast. It's all about the transgender battle. Lots of interesting elements there. That will be next week's podcast, and we will see you next Friday with Brandon Showalter.